Well, hello, and thank you for your interest in serving as a volunteer in children's and youth ministry. We really appreciate your interest, and we want to start off this video by highlighting a little bit of background about safe sanctuaries and why it's important and why this is critical for the church. The General Conference of the United Methodist Church, which is the body that meets usually every 4 years and decides major policy changes for the entire church, they adopted a resolution in 1996, and it was designed to help reduce the risk of children and youth sexual abuse in the church. And I want to read a little bit from that statement to provide a little bit of context for us today. Jesus said, "Whoever welcomes a child welcomes me." Children are our present and our future, our hope, our teachers, and our inspiration. They are full participants in the church and in the realm of God. But Jesus also said, "If any one of you put a stumbling block before one of these little ones, it would be better for you if a great millstone were fastened around your neck and you were drowned in the depth of the sea." You see, our Christian faith calls us to be places where we have protection and hospitality for the little ones. Tragically, churches have not always been places that are safe for children. Child sexual abuse, exploitation, ritual abuse, these are problems that occur in all kinds of churches across all cultural, economic, and racial lines. Many of the annual conferences in our United Methodist Church can cite specific incidents of child sexual abuse and exploitation within its churches. And virtually every congregation has among its members adult survivors of early sexual trauma. And this can be devastating for all involved, the child, the family, the local church, its leaders. And churches continue to be torn apart by legal and emotional and monetary consequences of litigation following allegations of abuse. So God calls us to make our churches safe places, places that protect our children and our youth and other vulnerable persons from sexual abuse. God calls us to create communities of faith where children and adults grow safe and strong. We are in covenant as Colonial Heights United Methodist Church with our conference and with our denomination. And we adopted a policy several years ago that's recently been updated to help prevent children and youth abuse in the church. The purpose of that goes as follows. Our congregation's purpose for establishing these children and youth abuse prevention guidelines and accompanying procedures is to demonstrate our absolute and unwavering commitment to the physical safety and spiritual growth of our children and our youth. Our covenant reads, "Therefore, as a Christian community of faith and a United Methodist congregation, we pledge to conduct the ministry of the gospel in ways that assure the safety and spiritual growth of all our children and youth, as well as all the workers with children and youth. We will follow reasonable safety measures in the selection and the recruitment of workers. We will implement prudent operational guidelines in all programs and events. We will educate all of our workers with children and youth regarding the use of all appropriate guidelines and methods. And we will have a clearly defined procedure for reporting a suspected incident of abuse, one that conforms to the requirements of state law, and we will be prepared to respond to media inquiries if an incident occurs." To conclude, in all of our ministries with children and youth, Colonial Heights United Methodist Church is committed to demonstrating the love of Jesus Christ so that each child will be surrounded by steadfast love, established in the faith, and confirmed and strengthened in the way that leads to life eternal. This is part of our baptismal covenant as United Methodists and as Christians, and this is why this is so important.
The main goal of our Safe Sanctuary policy is to keep our children, youth, and volunteers safe. The best way we have found to do this is to follow the 2 adult rule. This rule is super easy to remember because it is exactly what it sounds like. We require 2 unrelated adults to be present in all programming, events, and ministries with children and youth. If two unrelated adults cannot attend, the event must be canceled. If the event involves splitting into groups, we aim to have 2 adults present with each group. When that is not possible, 1 adult serves as a floater and monitors the spaces where groups are meeting. We also aim to follow the 2-adult rule when transporting children and youth, and if ever that is not possible, a parent or guardian's permission is required for transportation. We know that sometimes older children or youth may seek confidential conversation with an adult they trust, like our ministry staff or volunteers. If this situation occurs, an appropriate space in constant public view or within sight of another volunteer aware that a counseling session is in progress is required. For example, I might meet with a youth in a corner of the ministry center where others can see the conversation is happening, but what the youth is sharing cannot be overheard. The 2-adult rule is really the guiding principle of our policy, but I do have just a few more guidelines to review. The first is about digital communication. As 2020 has showed us, the way we use technology in ministry is increasingly necessary and rapidly evolving. It is the intent of our policy to maintain an appropriate balance between using new communication tools and keeping people safe. Put simply, the 2-adult rule applies to all types of children and youth ministry events, including online programming like Zoom meetings and digital communication like text messaging. For example, when texting youth about events or checking in on them, I always include one of our adult volunteers or another church staff member on the text message. And if a youth texts you as a volunteer or me, a staff member, separately, we recommend in our policy keeping the conversation brief and moving into a public space or group conversation whenever possible. Secondly, our Safe Sanctuary policy outlines who can serve as a volunteer in our ministries with children and youth. Any person wishing to volunteer with children or youth must have been an active participant at Colonial Heights United Methodist Church for at least 1 year before being allowed to serve in ministries with children and youth. And all volunteers in ministries with children and youth must complete a Safe Sanctuary volunteer profile form and Safe Sanctuary training once a year. Additionally, all our volunteers must be at least 4 years older than the oldest child or youth they are supervising. We require background checks of any volunteers who chaperone overnight events like Resurrection or lock-ins, and we require background checks of all of our staff. Finally, by serving as a volunteer with ministries to children and youth at Colonial Heights UMC, you are agreeing to report any suspected incident of physical, mental, or emotional abuse. The current phone number of the Tennessee Department of Children's Services 24-hour child abuse hotline is included in our Safe Sanctuary policy and posted in my office. More information about how to report any suspected abuse is included in the final section of our Safe Sanctuary policy, which I encourage you to read in full. Above all, in the event that a child or youth discloses abuse, we seek to respond with compassion by affirming the child or youth for their courage to speak up, assuring them that they are believed, listening attentively, and refraining from asking too many or leading questions which could confuse later testimony. Now that you have finished watching this video, please take a moment to fill out the Safe Sanctuary volunteer profile form, which can be downloaded from our website or picked up in the church office. Thank you for watching this video and joining the Colonial Heights staff, our church leadership team, and children and youth ministries in creating a safe and nurturing space for our most vulnerable members. Jesus said, "Welcome the little ones, because we all enter the kingdom as a child." The longer I work with children and youth, the more convinced I am of the importance of these words. Young eyes see the world their place in it, and God differently. Where adults see the ordinary, children and youth often see the extraordinary. Where adults see roadblocks, children see possibility. Where adults see utter despair, youth see flickers of hope. Jesus seems to have understood that children offer a unique glimpse into what it means to be people of faith, who celebrate the present moment, look at the world with wonder, and expect God to do miraculous things. When we commit to creating safe spaces for our children and youth to grow and learn, we are making a statement to the world that we value their witness.
Jesus loves me, this I know, for the